All right, welcome back to another conversation. It's like commercial versus corporate. It's not really versus like we're in a battle. It's more like a comparison. But I'm Abbie Unger from Flight Attendant Career Connection. I'm here with Natalie from Yours Inflight. I help commercial flight attendants land their dream job. Natalie helps private or corporate flight attendants land their dream job. And so if you haven't seen our other videos, we have a couple on the YouTube channel, so I'd love for you to check them out after this. Gives a little bit more about our background. But in this video, we wanted to do a really intense compare and contrast between commercial versus corporate or private aviation. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask a question and then I'm going to answer it from the commercial point of view. And Natalie's going to answer the exact same question from the corporate or the private point of view, so that you can have both answers in one place and can help this can help you decide what's next for your career path, which type of flight attendant career, or maybe even both. Some people do both at the same time, even which one is best for you next or now. Also, it'll just help you be more knowledgeable about the industry in general, which is always beneficial. So the first question we're going to start with is, do you need to be trained? Do you need training? Do you need to go to school before you become a flight attendant? Okay, so I'm going to answer from the commercial side. You do not need any kind of special training before you apply to become a flight attendant on the commercial side. So flight attendant, every single airline has a FAA certified training program that they will send their new hire flight attendants through. And no matter what kind of training you have, no matter if you've been with another airline or you went to some kind of flight attendant school, you have to go through the same training. It doesn't matter what your experience is. You have to complete the same training, the whole thing. So there are flight attendant schools out there, and they will teach you generalized things about becoming a flight attendant, but they are not helpful. And in a lot of cases, they can actually be harmful because they're teaching you something that may not match your airline exactly, because each airline creates their own training material and then they submit it to the FAA and the FAA then approves it. So it's not like the FAA is sending a book out to every single airline that has the exact same training. So evacuation commands may be different from what you learned versus your airline. You're not going to probably learn all the doors that you need to learn. So it's not helpful and it can be harmful, and it's also very expensive. So I suggest that instead of going to a school, which I think is a very bad idea, invest either in some sort of, if you're not a great swimmer, take a swim class. You could take a CPR class because that just makes you a better human being roaming around the earth. You can look at your local community college and see if there's some kind of public speaking, if that's something that you struggle with. There's also books on Amazon. I have books. You can read books about it. And of course, I do offer resources like coaching and things like that if you are wanting to make a little bit bigger investment. But these schools are not the way to go, and it's not required. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you, Natalie, is training a requirement before you start pursuing the flight attendant career on the corporate side?
You answered that very well. Like that, you did. You answered that very well. Like just making it abundantly clear that what Abbie and I both offer are trainings for you as a human being, helping you be the best that you can be, as you said, walking upon this earth. So, so do you need training or school for private? The short answer is no, it's not a requirement. The other side of that is it's encouraged. So I had my first few months of flying in private, I didn't have what we call the Yale and Harvard of safety training. So I actually worked some more trips so that way I could actually pay for the safety training. Once you do have the official safety training from Air Care Facts or Flight Safety, once you have that, then you are more valuable to other employers who want to only have people that are trained under that. Other supplemental training that makes you more valuable, that stands out from others, are culinary training. There is one in South Florida that I highly recommend of Da Vinci. And then there's another one in California called Corporate School of Etiquette. There's a vast, any kind of culinary training though is very helpful. But again, there's nothing that's quote unquote required, but it's very helpful to make you look better.
Okay. And so just for clarification, it's not a training though that you would get, like if you get hired by someone, they say, hey, I want you to come work on my jet. They don't usually send you through training. Is that usually something that you would pursue on your own?
There are some operators, some charter, and then we also may need to qualify that too about the charter aspect of it. There are some operators / charter companies that have some of the bigger ones like NetJets, VistaJet, FlexJet. They have for their full-time employees, they do have their own company training that to see what their company values are, their core values, their mission statement, all of that. So that way you're all under the same mindset that way. But in general, like the smaller operators, not so much.
Okay. So, because I was like, do not go to school. But what you're saying is there is some schooling that you may want to invest in if it's air care, would you say FACS and air safety, right? Those would be the ones that
just the short answer is FACS and flight safety. Those are the two.
Okay. All right. Good. But like you said, you got started, since it's not a requirement, you were able to start working as a private flight attendant and then sort of upgrade your resume.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
The more I worked, the more money I was able to save up to be able to pay for the other ones. And there's also scholarships, and we can go into that another day.
Nice. Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay, good. Let's talk about
money.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about money. I'm gonna ask you. This is my turn to ask a question. Okay. So in the first year of commercial, how much can you expect to make? We'll start there.
Okay, so it's going to depend on what airline you work with. Now, the math is a little bit, there's a bit of an equation to find out how much each airline is actually paying per month. And I have a video that walks you through the entire thing. So I'm going to link that below so you can watch it and take notes so that you can really compare apples to apples when you're looking at the different airlines. But the good news is we have seen a huge increase in pay over the last 18 months. And some of the regional airlines are actually paying more or comparable to the mainline airlines, which is awesome because they were paying well below the poverty level before. So now what you can expect to earn as a brand new flight attendant conservatively is anywhere from about $32,000 a year to about $50,000 a year. Okay. Now this is conservative. It depends on how much you fly. It depends on, of course, all of those kinds of things. And you always get your health insurance. You always get flight benefits, so you can fly for free. And you also get discounts on hotels and things like that, cruises, as a commercial flight attendant. So I want to bring those up because I know Natalie's about to bust my number out the water with as far as how much you make. But, keeping in mind that there are some benefits that also come with working for a corporation or working as a commercial flight attendant that maybe don't fall on your side. So as much as I tried, she's going to totally win this one. So Natalie, how?
But it just comes back to what is made for you. Like, do you want to fly commercial or do you want to fly private? The conservative side, there's two different ways of looking at it when you're going to be, there's three different ways actually. There's contract work, which is paid by the day. Like you come in and fill in for someone that works full-time, they are sick or whatever the case may be. You come in and just work for a day or two or three and you get paid by the day. When you think of that type of work, it can range anywhere from $700 to $1,000 a day. There are still some, we've also been in a transition of pay. There are still some that pay $500 to $600 a day. So that's also a way to be able to get your foot in the door, is working with those operators because they are willing to work with new people that have no experiences. The second part of that is with charter. The conservative side, the lowest I've seen is $44,000 to $45,000 a year. Okay. That ranges upwards of 50 to 60, and then the highest in charter is about 72,000. And like you said
Okay.
about the benefits, there's also health benefits, 401k and all of that. There is not flight benefits, but we also get hotel points. Like most operators will try to stay at a Marriott or a Hilton, and then you can accumulate those points and then be able to use them to be able to have, it's just a different mindset on that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then normally you will also accumulate airline points or miles as well, because you have to commute to the aircraft, and that's going to another subject, but there's another benefit in that. The
Okay.
third way that you can fly private is flying for a private owner, where that's all you fly is that particular owner and his family or whatever it is. I say his, man or woman.
Yeah.
And that is where the money is, like really where the money is. The lower side that I have heard from what they call Part 91, private owners are 110 to a year, upwards of 220. So it's a vast, like, so if you put it all in perspective of beginning charter of 44,000 a year, and it can go all the way up to about 220 a year, but that takes, I say it takes time, but I've known people that they just happen to be in the right spot and they got hired with a private owner within 6 months.
Wow.
So it just depends. Yeah, it just depends.
Yeah. Okay. See, I knew she's gonna win. But there's pros and cons to all of it. Okay.
There are.
Yeah. I mean, if someone is paying you over $200,000 to be a private flight attendant on their plane, I imagine the expectations and the requirements are pretty substantial as well.
Yes.
So.
The one that I'm thinking of particularly like that, they were going to be on call for most of the month. They wouldn't have the hard days off. I think the hard days off were very minimal. I want to say 10, but I don't even think it was that many. They were going to be, even if you didn't have a set schedule with the owner, you needed to be ready to up and go whenever he was ready.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good.
So like you said, it's a different life. It's a completely different lifestyle on that aspect too of, do you want a life? Do you need a quality of life? Or is that your life?
Yeah. Which kind of brings us to the next question, and I'll go ahead and ask you. So what does schedule look like? How does scheduling work on your side?
I'll go in the same order. Contract work is either feast or famine, because you have to keep continually nurturing your contacts to be able to share your availability. So I've had months where I have flown 20 days and had contract pay that entire, and then I've also gone a month or two and not had any work. So there's that aspect of contract work. So it has to depend upon what you prefer. Do you want that stability? If you want stability, the charter side normally go 8 days on and 6 days off, or 15 days on and 13 days off. And then there's sometimes they will do 20 days on and 10 days off.
Wow. Okay.
And that's too much for me. Like I hit my limit at 7 or 8. That's me though. Yeah. And then for the private owner side, there's no telling. It could be anything. Yeah. And then that's where you can negotiate. That's why it's so broad. Like from the 110 to 220, like you have negotiating aspects of like, you want to be sure that you have your so many days off, or you want to make sure that you have this particular kind of health benefit, or you want to, I mean, there's so many ways to negotiate to be able to make that work for you. All right. That's my schedule. What about commercial?
Well, I have one follow-up about schedule. So when you're working on the contract side, and it's like feast or famine, if someone calls you to take a trip, do you have to take it, or do you have some flexibility? Okay, so like if they call you, so is it similar to being on reserve, or you need to take it because it's in your best interest? Versus
that's the answer. It's in your best interest to take it, unless you've been in the industry a while and you have backup plans, but you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot.
Okay.
You want to be able, if there's like, you absolutely cannot take it because for whatever reason, you want to share that you're still willing to help them. Like, I've got a friend in such and such place and has this much training. I completely trust them to be on board your aircraft, and they will see that you are still a valuable asset because you're helping them.
Oh, okay. All right, good. So schedule on the commercial side is
Yes.
different. So you're working for one company. Now most flight attendants will start out on what's called reserve, and you get your schedule a month in advance. And on that schedule, you will have R days, reserve days, and you'll have off days. Each airline has a different minimum number of days off. And that is in their collective bargaining agreement. So if you go to the internet and Google the name of the airline you're interested in, flight attendant and collective bargaining agreement, you can read the union contract. It's on the internet. And so you can find out, is the minimum days off 11? Is the minimum days off 8? Is the minimum days off 12? And so you can get that information. Now you'll bid for your schedule, which means you'll sort of ask, either put the different schedules in order, or you'll ask for certain days off, and you'll be awarded your schedule based on seniority. So when you start out, you're on reserve, and you'll probably be working weekends because those are the least desirable days to work. So your schedule will look like having 4 or 5 days on reserve, which means you're on call. You will need to be within the area, the time frame that your airline mandates from the airport. So whether it's 2 hours or 4 hours, you will have to be within that frame, that distance, while you're on reserve the whole time. So even if you have flights that go to your base all the time, you can't sit at home unless you live in base. You have to be actually within that driving distance of your airport when you're on reserve. Okay, so that's kind of where commuting goes. And your schedule will come out. You'll be on reserve. You'll be waiting to see what kind of trip you get. So as a reserve or an on-call flight attendant, you are there to pick up trips that other flight attendants haven't picked up, trips that people are maybe taking a last minute vacation, like they're using their vacation days last minute, or they're sick. You also will cover a lot of flights when aircraft has a mechanical or it breaks down in an outstation, and now they need to bring in a new plane and a new crew to continue the trip that original crew was going to do. Or maybe there's a weather delay somewhere, and again, they're going to bring in a new plane and a new crew. That's your reserve flight attendant, to help fill in all of those different trips. So after you have a little bit of seniority, meaning you've kind of growing up the list of people, and you've got people underneath you. Once there's enough flight attendants junior to you to cover all of those reserve responsibilities, then you get to become what's called a line holder. So then when you get your schedule, comes out the same kind of day, none of that changes. Minimum days off don't change a ton either, but instead of having on-call days on your schedule, you will actually have trips. 3 or 4 day trips. Usually you'll know kind of where you're going, how long you're going to be there, where you're overnighting, what type of aircraft you're going to be on. Now, of course, this is all barring that things go well and smooth. Even as a line holder, you're going to be rerouted. You're going to end up over here when you were supposed to be over there because of weather or mechanicals, things like that. But you're not just sitting around waiting. And for the most part, you're going to get to do what your trip says. When you look at the really big picture, you will kind of know where you're going to be, where you're going to be sleeping, what hotel you're going to be at. This can help with packing, or if you want to like take your friend or your cousin to dinner or whatever, it just helps with that. You're not like last minuting everything. And that's becoming a line holder. So your schedule, also when you get trips like that, you can trade them. So you can trade with other, if a flight attendant goes on vacation, or they trade for a different trip, their old trip will show up in what's called open time, and you can trade for it. So some people make it their whole career to sit on open time and to see what good trips. Oh, I got a Hawaii. Oh, I got a Europe. It's like a whole thing. It really is, right? I mean, it's like people are really good at it. So there's like a whole kind of like side to it too, where you can really get a lot of control over your schedule and know where you're going, and you'll know what you want to work, what you like to work, and things like that. Now, the benefit though of reserve is that even though you don't know where you're going, you sometimes get to go really good places, because once you become a line holder at first, you're going to get kind of like the junk trips that other people don't want so much. But as a reserve, you will maybe get really cool trips. So I'll never forget, I got assigned a trip on reserve to Omaha, and I was walking through the airport, and crew scheduling in the Newark airport, crew scheduling calls me and says, we've got to recrew a Barcelona. You're not going to Omaha anymore. And so I was like, and I got to go to Barcelona. So that, I mean, you know, I only got that because I was a reserve flight attendant. So that can be really, really exciting too. But you never really know what you're doing. So that's the difference with schedules. About 10 days off a month and about 20 days on reserve is kind of, to boil it all down, is what the schedule looks like. Okay. And then
there's a lot more to the commercial side of scheduling than there is to the private side. It can be a game. Like I was an open time swapping queen with Delta. Like I just loved it. I would just be on there doing like,
oh, that looks good. I'm gonna go to Barcelona. Oh no, I mean Athens. Yeah, that one's even better. Yeah. And so you're just trading. And the reason I asked about like, do you have to take the trip is because in reserve, if they cannot contact you, then you can lose your job. So you don't have the option to be like, oh man, I wish I could. You don't really have the option because you will get fired.
This isn't necessarily are you gonna get fired or not, because if they're calling you and you're a contract person, it's more of just to have more trips from them in the future. If you're a full-time employee, like sometimes they may not use you for a little bit and you'll be sitting in a hotel, or you may be sitting at home for a few days, which that doesn't happen that often at home, but then you have to go because that's your full-time job.
Right.
But
good.
And they'll be like, why are you telling me no? Like this is not an option.
Right. They're like, no. Right. Because I imagine if you are working for a company, that's why commercial is like that, because you're working for a company. So anytime you're working for a company and they put you on call, you got to go where you're going. But if you're independent contractor, you have a little more play around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Good.
So can you fly without any experience?
Good. Commercial. Yes, absolutely. You can be hired as a flight attendant with no experience, with no flight attendant experience. You need to have about 2 years of customer service experience. Face-to-face customer service experience is preferred, but if you have call center experience or something like that, that's fine too. The airline will teach you every single thing that you need to know. Everything you need to know. They will teach you service. They've already decided how they want service done for every single route. And they will teach you all of that, plus all the safety information you need, plus all the de-escalating techniques you need, plus all the medical that you need, plus all of the self-defense that you need. They will teach you everything, all of it. You will have a picture of the plate that in first class, and it will have a photo of where the green beans go and where the mashed potatoes go and where the turkey goes. You don't make any of that. Like they will teach it all to you. You need zero experience. Now, that being said, if you have flight attendant experience, training can be a little bit easier because you kind of already have a little bit of a foundation, or if you have aviation experience from working on the ground or working somewhere else, it can definitely give you a little bit, it just gives you context, right? So that you already know some airport codes, you already know, how the lab works, there's different things like that. But I'll never forget when I was in United training, one of my really sweet friends and classmates, we went on our first observation flight, went to Omaha from Chicago, and that was the first time she'd ever been on an airplane. So we had already been hired. We had been in training. Training was like 8 weeks at the time. We'd been in training 3.5 weeks. And then she got to fly on an airplane for the first time. And so she basically was from a cornfield in Illinois and had driven to the face-to-face. So she had never even flown. So do you need experience? Not as a flight attendant, but you do need that customer service and that hospitality heart and that knack and that kind of like intuition. You do need that. Southwest is famous for saying that they hire for personality and train for skill. And I think that goes for all the airlines. They will hire for personality and then they're training you for skill. They're not looking for skilled flight attendants. So that's my answer. What about you? So can you work as a private or a corporate flight attendant with no flight attendant experience, or do you need a little bit?
No, you don't need any experience at all. This is where I come in with my hardcore. It's not what you know, but it's who you know. If you don't
Ooh,
remember anything from my side of this interview today, it's who you know, not what. It's who
wow.
you know. So it is like back to when we talked about this, the training and the schooling in the first question. It's helpful to have some kind of experience in customer service or some kind of hospitality. It looks good to have, like, if you have like Marriott experience, Four Seasons, or anything to do with that whenever you're trying to get your foot in the door with someone that doesn't know you. That's good. That looks good on your resume. Another point I wanted to bring up was when you were talking about the airline teaches you everything, like everything that you need to know. You do not have to worry about, am I going to know how to do this? Because they drill it into your head that this is what you need to know. On the private side, it is very much self-teaching. It is very much self-driven. Of, if you want to make this your career, it's finding that information of, like, where do I get the culinary training and where do I meet these people? And it's very much figuring things out. And I try to help alleviate that, because there's a lot of, I call flopping around a fish on dry land, because you're just trying to figure things out. But commercials, the complete opposite of that. But answering the question, do you need flight attendant experience? No, you do not.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That just kind of
go ahead.
Sorry, just to kind of like, because I think we're both kind of touching on this, like the catering aspect of it, even like, you know, everything on commercial is catered on, everything is just loaded on. And for on your side, you really get to source everything. You get to like go to the restaurant or go to Whole Foods or go to or I'm saying it like
catering companies.
Or sometimes you have to figure it out, right? And then you get to put
do.
it on the plate however you think is best for who you are serving in the moment. Versus on the commercial side, like you're just serving it. I mean, you're making it nice. Both are nice, but one has a lot more room for creativity. So if you're listening and like you love that kind of stuff, like tablescapes and you know, like
plating, the art of plating,
all of that kind of stuff, and creating a memory with a theme. If you love a theme party, then you know this
fun,
that might be a really private might be where you shine, maybe a little bit more even than on the commercial side. So something to think about. Okay.
You can find a lot of those theme parties on LinkedIn. There's several flight attendants that I follow that they're very skilled in that area. Like they were going to Mexico for someone's birthday, so they had the whole plane decked out in sombreros and all kinds of Mexican themed stuff, and it was a big hit. They had the balloon arch and all. Anyway, but yeah, there's a lot of fun with the creativity aspect of it.
Yeah, that's so cool. That is really cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how aviation works as far as Part 21, Part 91, Part 135. So we're going to talk about Natalie and I are going to discuss next about basically how aviation is organized. And this is going to be a very high level and basic overview. And it's just to help you in case you hear these terms thrown around. So the FAA, because it's a government agency, loves to use numbers to define things, right? So commercial aviation, what we think of as scheduled commercial aviation, where I can go buy a plane ticket on this flight that is scheduled every Tuesday that goes from here to Atlanta. I am buying a ticket on a Part 121 aircraft, okay, or airline. Now that airline, because it falls under that number, which the FAA defined it, it has certain criterias. It is serving the public. It is public transportation. Public transportation in any sense is much, much, much more highly regulated than private. So if we think about it this way, if I have a bus and I'm just picking people up and driving them around and I'm selling tickets for my bus, the government, the DOT, will have more stringent regulations for me and my public bus than they do for me and my minivan when I drive my children to school, or even if me and my minivan were picking up our neighbors and driving them to school. Okay, so there's a lot of different rules and regulations. You know, if you're driving public transportation, you need a CDL license, or you need a chauffeur's license. There's different regulations to keep us safe when you're serving the general public. Now, as these different airplanes get to be more and more private and personalized, the government just sort of pulls off a little bit. And so the regulations are not as intense. So the Part 121 commercial, a scheduled service, is very heavily regulated by the FAA. We've already said that the training programs are FAA certified. When you become a flight attendant for one of these airlines, and these are the airlines that we know by name, Delta, American Southwest, SkyWest, Republic, any of these, you will actually become a FAA certified flight attendant, and you will get a little card from the FAA. It's like a little license that you will have to keep with you at all the times that says you're an FAA certified flight attendant. Okay, so that's what Part 121 is. Now on the other ones, Part 90? What, Part 91 and Part 135, these are, how would you define them? These are private, right?
The private side, pretty much everything outside of 121. There's also a cargo one as well. So there's several parts. So it defines what regulations need to be followed according to the FAA. So 135, like you explained it very well. What, like, the more private it goes, the more the government comes, however you said it, they pull back. That's the word you use. They pull back. Yeah, I saw this. That's what I remember, was you using your hands. Because the private people want it to be. They want it to be. Right. We're flying private for a reason.
Right.
So 121 is commercial, and 135 is charter, which would be there's certain safety regulations of, like, you have to make sure your seat belt is on. You have to do a safety demonstration. It's not a choice. Basic safety things, those are still in place. They have to be followed. Like the footrests have to be in place. The seat backs have to be up. That kind of basic thing has to be done for 135. Again, we're doing just basic stuff here. When you go down to Part 91, it's the private owner, and it's a little bit more free fall. Like rest periods, another big one. There's rest periods that have to be regulated in the 121 and 135. But on Part 91, there's not a lot of regulation on rest. So I just to kind of put that in perspective, when I did an overseas trip, I worked an 18-hour day because it was for a private.
So no,
I was alone with my two pilots, and so there was no regulation on, like, we needed to have our rest, but it was a very long. So that's one of them is safety. Now remember, that's one of the biggest ones is rest. They don't necessarily have to have their seatbelt on. It's a good idea. We encourage it. They don't have to have the safety demonstration because it's their aircraft. They know what it is, but we'll ask them, like, do you want, like, just a reminder or anything? And of course they don't want to. It's more of a judgment call of just watching body language. But the regulations, as far as just the basic things that you would do on 121 for 91, are vastly lax.
Okay. I need to just plug my computer in, so I'm going to turn my video off for just a second. Okay. So that you don't have to see me stand up, and then we can get back to it. All right. I moved so I could get the light, and then I forgot to turn my computer, plug my computer back in. Okay, good. So that, and I think that's really good way to think about it too. As it becomes more private and more personally owned. And again, if we're thinking about it transportation wise, it would almost be like Uber. Like if I'm driving Uber, I have some regulations, or versus if I'm hiring a chauffeur, like if I'm hiring someone to be my personal driver just to drive me around, then as long as I feel good about them, there's probably not a lot of training that he needs. Versus if I want to have a limo that I drive people around and they hire it, then there's going to be, a few more regulations. Versus if I have just like a bus and just anybody can get on, that's going to be, it's a bigger vehicle, it's a bigger licensing, so many different kinds of things. So But with the Part 135, we see a bit of some overlap though.
There is
sometimes, don't we? So there's some airlines, I think Jet SweetX or JSX is 135. I think not Commute Air, Contour has a 135 scheduled service side. And so those two airlines do have their own training programs, but they, because of the size of aircraft that they have and the way that they operate, you'll notice that they have different sometimes security regulations even to board the plane. So they're going in on the private side, and you're not going through the regular TSA and things like that. So that's, if you're kind of wondering like, how are they able to do that? It's just because they have filed under a different part with the FAA. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it, right?
I have one other thing.
Okay.
Whenever I forgot to say this part, whenever you said that about, you're right, when on Part 121, the commercial side, you are a certified flight attendant, which that is not the case on the private side with 135 and 91. That's why you'll see a lot of times, you'll see, if you're looking at job applications, you'll see cabin aide, cabin server, cabin attendant, all kinds of names, anything but flight attendant. And sometimes you'll see it just to be able for search terms, but technically on the private side, we are not flight attendants. And some people get sometimes they don't like that, but that's just the way it is. According to, if you want to be official from the FAA, we are not flight attendants on the private side. But whenever we go to our safety trainings, we will say we are certified safety trained.
Oh, okay.
It's just a little verbiage, and that will also show that you know what you're talking about when you say stuff like that, because you don't want to say you're a certified flight attendant on the private side, because they're like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Just a little tidbit.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I also, even on the commercial side, depending on the number of seats is what dictates whether or not a flight attendant is necessary, and the number of flight attendants. So here in Hawaii, we have an airline called Mukulele, and they just got 32-seater planes, and so they just got flight attendants. So all their other planes had been 9-seaters or 12-seaters, so they were not requiring a flight attendant. The FO, the first officer, actually would do the safety demo. So they've just brought on flight attendants, and then for every 50 seats, you need an additional flight attendant. So if your plane is 70 seats, then you need 2 flight attendants. And that's all on the 121 side. Whereas on the private side, they're not required. Correct? That's kind of what you're saying. It's not a required.
Yes, except there's one little spot on the Gulfstream 550, to be specific.
Okay.
Where there is more than 10 people. The FAA requires it because they've done the studies, or the whatever you want to call it, the emergency procedure, where they cannot get out 10 people. Like they can get out 9 in 90 seconds, but they can't get out 10. So that's what they require it at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that 10 people on board? Not 10 seats, right? It's actually
10 people, 10 humans.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And that, which is a little different because commercial goes on the number of seats. So if you have a 70-seat plane with 2 people on it, well, you still need 2 flight attendants. That's really interesting. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's interesting to know. So next question. Application.
Yes, you or, okay, who's asking who?
I don't remember who's turn. Application. It's your turn. You asked me. Where can I find application? Ask me.
I'm asking you?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Abbie, in the commercial side of aspects, so my dream is to be a flight attendant. Yes. Where do I apply?
Well, you always apply with the airline, period, end of story, never anywhere else. You apply with the airline on the airline's website. Now, if you visit abbieUnger.org/airline listing, then you can find a page that has all the different airlines that are hiring, that are all the airlines that are in the US. And then we put next to it, if they're hiring or not hiring, it says accepting applications. And that will actually link you to the airline's website. So you're not applying through my site. Now, it's very, very important that you only apply through the airline's website because of the number of scams that are run. It can be anywhere from an inconvenience to dangerous. So someone slides in your DMs on Facebook, someone you met in my group slides in your DMs on Facebook, telling you they can forward your resume to a recruiter. No, immediately no, they cannot. Someone asks you, they offer you the job, they're so excited to hire you, to welcome you to this airline. Please send them a photo of yourself holding your passport. No, that all of it is a scam. It is like I said, anywhere from an inconvenience where they're going to be filing for unemployment under your name and social security number and stealing your identity, all the way to possibilities of being trafficked, things like that are a reality. Okay, so we thought this was going to be a light and breezy question, but
that was really heavy.
Yeah, I know.
It's quick. Real.
It gave heavy
real though.
It got, yeah, and I think on your side, I imagine there's going to be some you got to be careful too. So you just you apply through the airline's website, but it's easy. It's easy to do. You apply through the airline's website. You don't have to mail anything in, go to the airport, nothing like that. Just go. If they're hiring, you apply. If not, you wait, and then you apply when they're hiring. That's it.
Black and white. I like it. It's not necessarily that way on my side. There's several websites that you can go to. My favorite is bizjetjobs.com.
Okay.
It is $99 a year, and I'm not like, I have nothing with that, but they are my personal favorite because I get email notifications from them every day, if not several times a day, of companies coming to them and posting their jobs that they have available. Once you get to that website, it will direct you to the operators. It's completely different than commercial. I'm so glad that you went first on this one. So if you're on commercial, go to their website. On private, that's my favorite one because it sources everybody together. It's been around a long time, and everybody knows about it, so they post their jobs there. You can go to LinkedIn and look for flight attendant jobs, but make sure we're looking at the private side. LinkedIn, Facebook, there's several Facebook groups that I'm a part of, and people they'll post in there that there was one recently. There was a pilot posting that he needed a flight attendant for his Falcon 900 in Miami full time. And it was just a Facebook post. And so he went through the DMs and started asking people for their resume. So that's when you start using that keen awareness of like, who is this guy? Has he been in the group for a long time? You can look at his profile. Does he have does he look aviation related? There has been that sometimes I've come across of like, who is this guy? But it's a little bit more broad because there's literally thousands of operators that it's hard to be able to see who to apply with because there's so many options to apply with. So having a couple websites like LinkedIn or the BizJet jobs to source them down, to narrow it down a little bit, to be able to sort through it easier, that's where you can.
Okay, good. And then the networking, like maybe they're friends with someone. I mean, do you ever like that kind of stuff? Or
that's the other part. Like, but when you're first starting out, that's where you can start. And then the networking aspect is where I get most of my jobs now. Like, I'm great friends with several of my people here in South Florida, and so they'll get wind of a job, and so then we'll call each other and see who's available. It's not, a lot of times we'll already know if they're working or not just by following each other on Instagram. But the networking aspect of finding your little group of people is so imperative because they refer each other, and you guys have different networks outside of each other that talk to you and then share jobs.
Yeah,
it's a very giving aspect. It's not some people have the competitive aspect, and I'm not a big fan of that at all. I'm a huge advocate of supporting everyone for their success, because if you have that supportive aspect, not everybody gets that, but if you have that big support of helping everybody be successful, it's just automatic, you become successful as well.
Yeah. And there's enough room. I mean, like you said, there's literally thousands of operators, so there's room. Good. Okay. What kind of investment is needed? And how much money do you need to kind of get started as a flight attendant?
On the private side, you can just straight out start going figure out finding people, because it's a matter of who you know and not what you know. So you don't need like a set black and white. You have to have $5,000 set aside for you to be able to get into the private aviation sector. It is good to put in your back pocket to start saving for safety training from FACS or flight safety. The initial training for those are around 4,500, and then recurrent every year is 2250. One's 2250, one's 2150. So that's just something else to consider. Culinary training, again, not required, but highly encouraged. Makes you more valuable. Da Vinci has several to choose from in South Florida. Their big one is like 4 days, and it's 4,500, and they've got like 2-day trainings of butler and stuff like that, and those are more in the $2,000 range. I think Corporate School of Etiquette in California is the same way. So you make more in private, but you also pay more for your trainings to make yourself more valuable too.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it sounds like though the recurrent is maybe like 3 days worth of work. So if you're working more than 3 days a year, then you're coming out ahead with it.
Yes.
On the commercial side, training is, you don't pay for training. Once your airline hires you, you go through the interview process first, and then your airline will hire you and they'll invite you to training. Some airlines pay during training. Some airlines do not pay during training. All except one airline that I know of does, whether they pay you or not, will provide room and board for you, some meals up to all meals, and or per diem, which is a daily rate to help cover your food and things like that. Some airlines, there's a handful of airlines that will pay you kind of like what's a bonus when you graduate from training. So maybe training isn't paid, they're taking care of all of your resources and there are all of your needs, physical needs, shelter and food while you're there, and then giving you a bonus when you're successful. The only airline that does not provide any housing or any pay during training is Hawaiian Airlines, and it's 8 weeks long and it's in Honolulu. So you would have to find your own housing as well as food and things like that.
Wow.
Yep. So, which, everybody has a reason for why they do it the way they do it. So, so that's
Can I feed off of that?
What?
I'm gonna feed off of that. I said I'm gonna feed off of that too. I didn't think about so thank you for bringing that up about the accommodation aspect of it. So whenever you're going to these trainings that are several days long, you have to take care of your own hotel and flights. If you, like in South Florida, there's both of those are here, so they're driving distance. But if you don't live in a spot where there is one of those safety trainings, you need to pay for your flight there and also your hotel accommodations and food.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Good. Okay, good. You can ask me the next one.
Adriel, thank you for, because I lose track. Age requirements. Do you have to be at least a certain age, or is there a certain age that you no longer can fly? It goes both ways.
Okay, so minimum age is going to depend on your airline. There are some airlines that hire at 18. There's some that hire at 19. There's some that hire at 20, and then all the rest hire at 21. Usually around 20 is you're going to get a really good substantial amount of airlines to choose from. But 20, once you're over 21, you can apply to any of them, and there is no maximum age for flight attendants in the United States, which was hard fought for and I am proud of. Another thing to note is, even though there's it's more than just lip service to say there's no max age. It really, really is a culture in aviation that would embrace women, men of any age. So all the way up to being in your 50s or 60s. If you're not in your late 60s, you will not be the oldest person in your training class. If you're in your 40s and early 50s, you will definitely have people older than you. So, which I love. I love that. I love that so much. And it wasn't always that way. And it's not like that in every country around the world. That really is a freedom that we have here in the US, is that you can be married, have children, be divorced, be old, be whatever, and still become a flight attendant, which is awesome. Yeah,
it is. You're very right. You're very right. It's one of those proud to be an American moments.
Yes, I know. It's hard fought for. It wasn't always that way, but we got it right now. So thankfully.
Yes. There isn't a set in stone minimum age, but I have had operators tell me, I've been mentoring some that were younger, and they prefer 25 to 26 because of renting a car.
In a car.
So whenever we're out on the road, transporting ourselves around, a lot of operators will allow us to rent a car. And so if you're under 25 or 26, they'll probably move on to the next person, so that way they can rent a car. And as far as limits, there are many people that are in that are in my circle, at least, that are in like the second part of their life. Like they've done something for so long, they've been a nurse for so long, or whatever, a teacher, a mom, and then now that everybody's empty nest, then they come over like, I need something to do now. Like this, I need to go like do something for me. There's another one that I'm mentoring right now that she's in late 50s, maybe early 60s, and she was a cop. So I mean, it really, yeah, there's really not a limit on the
That's
older
awesome.
side. There's not, yeah. And then on
Yeah.
the minimum side, there's a girl right now that I've been visiting with, and she's 21. So there's some that will take her, but most require like for you to be 25 or 26.
Yeah, I have a friend who she's in her 50s now, late 50s now, and actually flies for Piedmont now, after she raised her kids, and now she's based at home and flies for Piedmont and loves it. But when she was in her early 20s, and I want to say maybe even like high school or just graduated high school, she was working as a private flight attendant for a little bit out of their FBO. I think that she must have had some kind of connection, or she interned at the FBO and ended up working on some of the flights, like through college or something, but like super young, like young, you know?
Yeah. It's one of my things that I always push. If you can go get a job in an FBO, being a line tech or a service agent, that is a huge, huge foot in the door.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good. I love that. Let's ask the question. I think you have it typed out. What's the next question kind of about crash pads and moving and stuff?
Oh, crash pads. Okay. So I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Help me understand on the commercial side, what is a crash pad and what is the purpose of having one?
Yeah. So a crash pad is a very general term for the place that you sleep when you're not at home. When you're in base and you're not at home. So if you, let's talk as well about like relocation and bases. So when you get to training, your airline at some point, either right before training or during training, will assign you a base. In the job description, you will know what the possible bases are. Just because an airline flies out of an airport doesn't mean that they have a crew base there. So the way that they do it is they will gather all of their employees, their flight attendants and pilots, into certain cities, airports around the country, so that they just have everyone sort of in one place. This makes it easier for them to disperse them instead of having everyone spread out all around the place. So you have options. You can either relocate or you can commute if you don't live in base. If the airlines prefer you to relocate, they will ask you if you're willing to relocate. They want people who are willing to relocate. Relocation is not a requirement. It is a preference of the airline, partly because if they required it, they probably would need to compensate or assist with the relocation. So they just encourage you to relocate on your own, and then it kind of like frees them to not have to help. Now, that being said, this is one of the really cool things about being a flight attendant is you can live anywhere. You don't have to move, but you would be commuting. So if you're not based at home in your home airport, you will commute to your base airport. It's sometimes called your crew base. It's sometimes called your domicile. And once that's where you will be when you're on reserve. So because you're on reserve and you're on call and you don't know if you're going to have a trip or not, you need a safe place to sleep and to be while you're waiting for your phone call. That is where a crash pad comes in. And crash pad is a very generalized term for that place. There's lots of different options. You could either, if you got it like that, you could just rent yourself an apartment and that would be your crash pad because you live at home with money bags who's paying for the apartment because you and your flight attendant salary ain't paying for it. So anyways, but
that's another subject, another day.
Right. Yeah. So, but you could just rent yourself an apartment, or you could just decide that I always stay at this one hotel. When I'm needed, I just pay by the night. If I get called off on a trip, then I don't stay there that night. And if I don't get a trip, then I do stay there. And you could call that hotel your crash pad or your crash pad hotel. You could rent a room from someone that you went to training with who already lives in that city. and they've got an extra spare room and you're renting a room. That's your crash pad. Or you could be living in a house or apartment that has been outfitted into a crash pad that is more of a business model. And that will look like a house that has a lot of bunk beds in it, and you will pay for your bunk. You'll basically be renting your bunk or renting a place to sleep. It's full of pilots and flight attendants for the most part. Sometimes there's rampers and mechanics in there, but all aviation people. And you'll have your bunk bed, or you'll have a bunk bed in the space. They usually have a bit of a shuttle, or they're on public transportation so that you can get to and from the airport easily. We see these a lot in big cities that are very expensive. So like Newark, New Jersey, JFK. I was trying to say New York. I kept saying New Jersey. Newark, New York, LA, Seattle, like Miami, places that are a little bit more expensive to just go rent an apartment will have these kind of crash pads where there's a lot of people in the crash pad. These can be good situations or not so good situations in these crash pads. A lot of times you can only get a spot through referral to kind of keep it that way. There's also a company called Hotel Crash Pad Network that I love. The owner is a captain for JetBlue, and he goes to different hotels in different cities and basically signs a contract with them, takes all the furniture out, puts the bunk beds in the hotel room, and then rents the bunks. But if that's the case, you get the hotel shuttle, you get the breakfast, you get to use the pool, housekeeping comes, you can go sit in the lobby, you know, so it's like an elevated experience of a crash pad. So that's an option too. So that's what a crash pad is. If you want to move to your crew base, you don't need a crash pad. Eventually, once you hold a line, you will get trips that are called commutable trips, which means you fly in the morning of the first day and you fly out the last day, and you never spend the night. And then you'll never spend the night in your base because you're working your trip, and you wouldn't need a crash pad then either. So there's different reasons that you would have a crash pad and things like that. So that's what a crash pad works. You don't have to have a crash pad. You can have as much privacy or as little privacy in your crash pad as you can afford or find. But there's lots of different options. Now, on the private side, do you
They're
have
not needed?
No,
they're not. They're not needed.
You have to move.
I'm sorry.
You have to move.
No. You don't. Well, it depends. Some require you to, but when they do require you to, it's more on if it's a private owner. The private owner wants you to live close to the plane. He wants you to live close to. I keep saying he. Can be either one. They want you to live close to them and the aircraft.
Okay.
The charter companies, like we'll just use NetJets as an example, so everybody knows who they are. They airline you to the aircraft. So just like completely flip your thinking in that on commercial, everybody's going to the aircraft. Everybody's reporting to that one spot. But in private, it's the other way around, in that the aircraft goes to the person, the client that's paying for the trip. So because of that, they will airline. I say airline meaning they will positive space you to the aircraft. So let's say you're on the 8 and 6 rotation where you're 8 days on and 6 days off. Your first day is travel day, where they will airline you, and they'll give you like the night before, tell you that the aircraft is going to be in Omaha, since that's the common denominator. We'll use that today. The aircraft's going to be in Omaha, and I live in Palm Beach. So then I will airline to Omaha, however that looks. And that's where you can start accumulating your I say sky miles because I like Delta, but your airline points or whatever miles that way. So because of back to the crash pad aspect of it, it's so easy to chase rabbits, but because you airline to the aircraft, crash pads are not needed. So whenever you're applying for things, it will say remote or home-based.
Okay.
Because you can truly live at home, and they will transport you to the aircraft.
Okay. I read a job description yesterday. It said something like required to live within 2 hours of an airport that has service from at least 2 legacy carriers. So
there you go. I've seen that. Yep.
yeah, so like that would be me in Honolulu. So even if like if I never work in Hawaii, they would airline me to wherever. Okay, an airline is similar to Deadhead for everyone that's listening, except
There,
you
yes.
buy you a ticket. So you are
Yes.
working in the sense that you are on the clock, but you're not doing flight attendant duties. Right? Is that yeah?
Correct.
Okay. Good, good.
Yep.
And since it's a confirmed ticket, you get the Sky Miles or the miles.
Yes.
Good. Okay, cool.
Yes. So it's helpful to kind of stick if you can. Some of them you can't quite. They will buy the ticket for you and you have no say in who they're buying it from.
Right.
But if you have choices, it's best to find who you want to accumulate points with, so that way you can claim get status.
Good, good. Okay. And I know like FSI, Flight Service International, that operates works with Omni, they do the same thing. So because they do have some they're like a charter for the Department of Defense. So they'll airline around too. So we do see this on like the commercial side, you know, on the less private flight attendant side. Cool. That's really good. Okay, good. Our referrals.
Let's start with the shuttle part.
Oh, let's start with the shuttle.
Like the shuttle, yeah, because you touched on it just a little bit. So like a lot of like in the big cities you're talking about, like Miami and wherever,
yeah,
they'll sometimes have shuttle. I know Delta did in New York a while back, that they had a shuttle that like in Kew Gardens where they would take you from your crash pad to your
the airport. Yeah,
the airport. So in private, they will. Like there's been some times, like I was up without a car recently and they would pay for an Uber for me to get to the airport. My dogs are going crazy. So they would pay for an Uber for me to get there. So like the shuttle aspect that you would have in commercial is not necessarily needed because the client has paid for you to be there. So they will do whatever it takes for you to get to the aircraft.
Oh, interesting.
Ubers or airlines or whatever it needs to be.
It's a whole different way of thinking about it. Like,
yes.
Yeah. So like, it's almost like if I had a nanny or something, then she came and kept my kids and like her car broke down. It's like, oh, I'll pick you up, or, oh, my husband will come get you, or, oh, I'll send you an Uber or something, because like I need her here. Like I'm not whereas the airline, it's just it's a corporation. So you're a little bit more of just a piece in a big game. That makes a lot of sense. That's good to know too. And then I know you mentioned about rental cars. So when you're on an overnight or something, you a lot of times have access to a rental car, and that's to help you pick up catering as well as get to the hotel and things like that.
All the things. Yes.
Which is really nice. Okay, good.
It is.
Let's talk referrals. So what is the one thing that we're all supposed to remember? It's not what you know, it's who you know. So I imagine that's going to go in for private, that's going to go into referrals. So how do referrals work, or are they helpful? How does that work on your side?
They are priceless. They are literally priceless, because like if there's like this guy I'm mentioning that he said that he needed a full-time Falcon flight attendant in Miami. He was inundated, like, because South Florida is very saturated with flight attendants. So I mean, just an educated guess, he probably had well over 100 people approach, like sending in resumes. So in order to stand out of that 100, like he is the one that's going through them, not a company or a machine or anything like that, but he was going to be going through them. So what I found, like I was actually promoting some of them. I was like, I said this one would be a huge asset, and then some of the others were doing the same thing with others. So I noticed just by visiting with my friends down here, he was talking to the ones that had that person that was promoting them, saying that this would be a great asset. So just that boost of like, this is a great person, or I would highly recommend them based upon their culinary skills, likes to cook on board. If you want fresh omelets for breakfast instead of catering, this girl's perfect for it, or this man is perfect for it. So referrals are everything in private.
Wow. Okay, good. So, you know, that makes sense, especially with your network, talking about networking and things like that. And so I would imagine on the other side too, you really got to be careful with your reputation, because you don't want
100%
to go the other way, right?
You're so smart. Yes, it is what it like. I'm serious. That was very keen. Like there sometimes I have noticed that just they forget. They're like, there's so many people, private, like there's so many people in aviation. I mean, nobody's gonna really know who I am. It's like, no, like there's some people that I know will not last long because they don't have a great reputation for various reasons, and it's just a matter of time. So yes, always being on, that's the similarity of commercial, like always being on your best behavior because you don't know who's going to turn you in. But the same
Right.
thing here is you may not have work if you have a reputation of there was a girl I was visiting this week, a flight attendant had a contractor come in and fill for it, and they were drinking the owner's coffee, and it was strictly labeled, do not drink this coffee. This coffee is strictly for the owner. It's expensive, hard to get coffee, and she drank like 5 of them. So it's like something like that we'll get around of, don't, like, just be on your best behavior. Be,
Yeah.
you know, that's huge.
Do what you're supposed to do. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
On the
So
commercial,
for commercial.
side, yeah. So for referrals, it is nowhere near as important, valuable, or anything as what you're saying on your side. So there, when an application opens, there is usually a place to have a referral if you know someone who works there. They're not that valuable. If you really do know someone, or your friend said, oh, come work with me, it's open, you could ask them to refer you. Every airline is different. Some airlines will have them actually, the employee start the referral and put your information in, which triggers an email to you. Others, you just are putting in their name and employee number. Due to fair hiring laws and the vast amount of applications that they get, these don't make a lot of difference. Recently we've seen the airline struggling so much for staff, though, that they've been incentivizing their employees, and so to refer, to bring in friends, and so sometimes they get like points or a little like bonus or something like that if they bring in a friend and they end up working out. So there can be some benefit on both sides, really. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a negative thing, but the reason I get nervous about this question when someone asks me is because I don't want anyone to take the time to go and find a referral. So like, if the application is open, I don't want you to go and like call your cousin's, mom's ex-boyfriend who works for Delta and track him down so he can refer you, because that doesn't matter. But if you do know somebody, it's like, hey, sure. Southwest does have a referral program where if you know someone who works for them, they can refer you, even with the flight attendant job not being open. And that triggers some emails from Southwest that are helpful, like career type emails that could be helpful. So that is beneficial, right? Because you're getting ready for your interview and things like that. But this is not a who you know kind of thing. Also, on the other hand, if you get fired from one airline, you can get hired by another one. Easy. Well, I don't want to say easy peasy because it's never easy, but depending, as long as it's not a drug test fail, if you have a mistake at one airline, your reputation isn't going to follow you. Your career's not over. It's not the end of the line for you. It's not the end of the game for you if you miss a call or something from crew scheduling. So that can be encouraging too. Because life is long. Sometimes people have stuff, make a mistake. Again,
Yes.
outside drug test failing, there is opportunity for that as well. It won't follow you around. So that's how references work on the commercial side.
I'll follow up on that with, like, as far as if something has happened where you've been at commercial and you got fired or for whatever reason, and even if it is for an FAA drug test, I will say that more than likely on the private side, that will not follow you. So that would be something, obviously make sure that you're in a good state of mind and you're healthy.
You fixed it, fixed whatever it was.
I said healthy, being diplomatic, healthy.
Yes.
Then you can start looking on the private side as a beam of hope.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's important that is important to note too, and it sounds like even the flexibility, if being on reserve or moving or commuting was the thing that got you in commercial, that's not that maybe wouldn't be a stumbling block on the corporate side too.
No, because it's like, unless you're working for a private owner that requires you, like there's specifically a private owner job that I turned down just because I didn't want to move. Like everything else lined up, everything else, but I just did not see myself moving. So there are those, like I even offered, I said, can we work out something where I commute? Like I find a buddy that we like the two of us are your flight attendants and work out something, but it's some of them are real strict about that aspect.
Yeah.
But as far as the charter aspect, no, you don't normally need to move somewhere. In fact, I'm asking people not to move to Florida because there's too many of us.
Yeah, I know. No, I mean,
Yeah, honestly, yeah. To the two places in the U.S. that are quote unquote hurting for flight attendants is California, West Coast. Oh, not just California, the whole all of West Coast, and then the Northeast corner, New York, and all
wow.
of that. There's tons of work up there, but Florida is a little bit saturated right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I
So.
can see that. Well, good. I think
Abby,
hopefully this was really helpful. If you're watching, I think that
yes.
I learned, so I know other
Yes.
people are learning things.
Yes.
I think this was really a good way too to compare and contrast and just see
I do too.
Huh. So if you're interested in learning more about corporate or private flight attendant, Natalie, as you can tell, has a wealth of information. I'm going to put the link to her website down below. She has a course, she has mentoring opportunities, she has so many resources, so many, and she has a network too.
I do. I do. And I actually am starting something right now. I'm working on building an app where it is like a Facebook group, but I'm also putting my courses in there. So that way, it's going to take a little bit, but right now I'm working on finding my founding members that are going to help me build the best course. So like, let's say you're fresh coming into private aviation, you don't know what to expect, what to look for. I'm finding my group of 10 people that will build this with me, because when I'm in it, there's things that I don't remember that I didn't know. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to direct everybody to my website of yoursinflight.com, which is, if you look at my name right here, it's yoursinflight.com, which will be entering in your email. And then I will then send you information where we can schedule a call together to see if we are a fit. I'm going to be doing that for the next week, and then I will end it on that Friday, the 30th, June 30th of 2023. And then we will start the course for 6 weeks starting July 7th.
Okay, good.
So oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's okay. I was just, I'm saying that will be I have a rough plan for 6 weeks for us to work together to get you propelling forward. I say rough because we're going to be working together, figuring out, like, there's a group of 10 of us of like what we're missing, what we need to do more of. And then you guys are going to be considered my founding members for. Good.
And that's through June 30th, 2023. So if you're watching this after, though, like she said, this is the first round. So if you're watching this in July or it's 2024 or whatever, still same website. Course will be no longer rough. So still, please go visit her website. Lots of information. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited. But if you are watching this sooner, please reach out to Natalie and see if you'd be a good fit for a founding member, because I mean, honestly,
it'll be fun.
Hands-on that
yes
will. So that's really helpful. So all right, well, thanks for your time, and
absolutely thank you.
I'll talk to you
Abby. Where can they find you? Abby?
Links below.
That's easy.
Yeah, so like and subscribe on the YouTube channel here, and then some of the things that I've referenced, like the airline listing page and things like that, all linked below, and that's how you can find me. So so I'll talk to you later. Oh, is it a dog? Oh, talk to you later. Bye.
All right, bye.